Okay, now working on the passenger side. Hopefully it'll go faster. So I took off the nut, cotter pin nut, and I think there was a was there a washer in the side? Actually, there was no washer in the side, unless it's stuck to the bearing. Yeah, I think it's stuck to the bearing. And so pull that off, and then the hub. This is the same thing as on the other side. There's a rubber ring here right up against the axle back here. That is the seal, and it doesn't look like what's in the Moss catalog, but I think it just came apart. If you look at this thing, I see it used to go in there, so maybe that seal just came apart. If anybody knows the answer to that, let me know. So I think I'm going to order the Moss replacements and hope that they work. And so now I've pulled those tabs up, or pounded those tabs up on the 4 bolts you see there. Next, those will come out. Okay, it was like this on the other side. This bolt in the lower rearward side of the 4 is threaded into the, I don't know what you call it, the hubbish-like thing, and there's no nut on the back. This one is also threaded, but there is a nut on the back with a washer. And the washer is to grab the fork in this back plate, dust plate deal here. You see that? So it makes sense there's a washer there, but I'm not sure why it's threaded twice. Maybe you're supposed to take the nut off first from the back and then take the bolt out, which I didn't do because I didn't know any better. But anyway, that might be the way to do it. Take the nut off first on the back and then unscrew the bolt. And this should lift off as soon as I get the whatever you call it, idler arm, I think, maybe. No, what is that? Anyway, the arm for the steering, and there's 2 spacers in there. You can kind of see that spacer in there. And that's going to fall out when I take that apart. And there's a spacer on the other side as well, which I probably can't get to. And that guy, it's got a bow in him, so you know which way he goes. Okay, the plate is off. It's a little bit of a brain teaser how to get it off. They're manipulating it around this bracket for the caliper. Would have been easier to pull that off first, but it's such a mess. I just wiggled it off. Finally found the combination. Here's the arm for the tie rod, spacer, and then long bolts, of course, to go through the spacer. So next I'll just pull this this piece off here. Okay, the bracket is off. And I put the bolt in with the washer that holds the backing plate. And I have the other 2 long bolts back through the steering arm guy. And then this one short guy with no nut goes here, so I think I'll thread them in and continue from there. It's just a little play in this top shock. That should be better when I replace the bushings and rubber in that. Okay, the lock nut and main nut are off the top of the shock there. I had to hold this top piece with a 1/4 inch open end to keep the shock from turning. So now I'll take the bottom plate, shock bottom plate off. Okay, actually, first I have to take this rebound bumper off. I think all I have to do is take these 2 bolts out back by the frame there. On the other side, I actually took the bumper itself off, which it was broken anyway, so I need a new one. This one looks intact, but if I just take off those 2 bolts that have nuts on the front side, then the rebound bumper falls away, and I can, safely take off this back underneath plate for the shock here. You can see one of the nuts for him. But to do that, I have to lift up slightly on this control arm with the jack to take the pressure off of it. Well, this is a little bit of a problem. I can't lift the bumper off, or the control arm off the rebound bumper there, because without the engine in, the whole car is going up. So this is going to be a little delicate trying to take that off with the pressure on it. Hopefully there's not much left, but I guess I'll see what happens. Okay, this might be a little dangerous, but I got a lever arm in here on the frame and underneath the control arm, jacked up. And now I actually have clearance there that the rebound bumper can come off. It's a little bit stuck in there, so I gotta be careful not to put my fingers or anything else in there. Try to get a long screwdriver and tap it off and stay away from this bar that's gonna go flying. Probably better to take this apart with the engine in if you have the option. All right, I didn't kill myself. I got the rebound bumper out, and now there's no tension on those bolts that I have pulled out slightly. I should be able to get that stopper plate off, and then I can get the plate off for the shock. After I get that stopper thing off, I can lower this dangerous mechanism and then work underneath safely. Okay, the rebound bumper and the bracket that holds it are off. And so now I can lower this down and work on the bottom plate of that shock absorber. And just so it's clear which way that plate goes on, I'm looking underneath the car. This is the outside axle side. And there's the plate. Okay, the bottom shock bracket is off. And now it's these stupid brackets that go on the sides of the shock there. And there's a long distance where the bolt goes through those and then it rusts, so they're not easy to get off. I went through this on the other side. I got a pry bar in there and work it back and forth and keep spraying WD-40 in, and after an hour or so they loosen up enough to come off usually. Okay, here's the bottom shock mounts. I'm finally getting them off. Once you get them moving, you pretty much have it. It's just working them back and forth enough times with WD-40, but it's able to get a claw hammer in here and get a good angular position to pull on them. But initially I had to start with this little crowbar thing and just get in here and try to move it a little bit back and forth. And I also did some wrapping with a bar like this and just hit the various corners just to try and start breaking it loose. And eventually you could see a slight movement. And then it was just a matter of working the oil in and prying it down a little bit, tapping it back up, prying it down, tapping it back up to work the WD-40 in. And it finally is coming out, but probably spent 45 minutes on this so far and worked up a good sweat. Okay, here's the shock stuff out. I did take this bolt out when I was trying to get these things to unbind so that this and this bracket can move independently to some extent anyway. I don't know if that helped or not, but probably did. Okay, taking the cotter pins out of these stupid castle nuts. So what I did is I broke off the tail end, and then if you pound a socket on, it's a little easier, I found, if you take the chisel and drive the head end of the remaining cotter pin back a little bit. Then it's easy to get the socket on straight, pound it on. And those four didn't come out too bad. The two that really suck are the ones that are up here between the frame and the bottom of the A-arm. So those are the ones that take the time, but I'm gonna go after those next. Okay, now that I got the first four nuts loose, you can see the spring plate there is starting to separate, but I still have the nuts on there, so it can't go anywhere. Now I have to get these guys back here, put the make room to get better access, I have to compress the spring. So I'm going to use my homemade spring compressor, where I've added a concentric tube here to protect the threads on that threaded rod as it goes through the spring plate. All right. Okay, I was able to get these loose. I actually got the cotter pin out of that one. And this one I had to break it off, and I was able to punch it through by putting my head in the engine compartment here and going through here. Not fun. It would be really hard if the engine was in. And then, of course, you can't really get a socket on there because the frame's in the way. And there's this lip here that gets in the way of a flat wrench, but this offset, where is it? This offset box end was the ticket. Glad I had that. Open end would not stay on because the lip would hold the wrench, you can only get it half the height of the nut. Okay, I got all the nuts off and the bolts out. The exception is this stop bumper here. Won't quite make it out, but it's okay. So now I'm gonna release the tension on the spring, and actually, before I do that, I might loosen up these nuts here and take the cotter pins out before it starts flopping around. There's a few of those I can get loose just in preparation. See guys back here. The bushing is shot. I don't know if I can move it now, but it was flopping around, of course. Okay, I put the jack under the trunnion and just gently lifted it up. It's very easy. And that gives more room for the plate to clear. Last time it hung up a little bit back here, so I think this is going to work better. So I'm trying to keep that A-arm structure basically horizontal, and then I'm letting the spring decompress as I undo my nut up here at the top. Okay, the jack idea didn't really work out because you can't slide the plate forward if it's hung up on the grease nipples and this trunnion. But what does work is to lift this up and then pry the plate out a little bit against the frame. You can get in kind of in the center and pry that out, and then the frame will clear back here, or the bracket will clear by the frame back in here. Okay, the second spring is out and the plate is over there. Now I'm trying to get these thrust washers off to get the control. So I had this problem on the other side. They're really on here tight. So I got to wiggle them and squirt in WD-40 until I can finally get them out. Okay, I got the lower wishbone arms out. It's just a goopy mess in there. It's hard to tell what's going on. But now I got to get this out. I'm going to take these top 4 bolts out over the shock tower and then lift that thing out, and I'll be done for today. It's been a battle. I thought this side would go faster than the other side since I knew how to do it, but it didn't. Here's the goopy arms. So I think I'll spend tomorrow just trying to clean all this stuff up. This thing's just got layers and huge amounts of greasy sand and so on it. It's take a lot of work to clean this up. All right, it's finally out. It was a long day just to get that stupid thing out.